Let's sit back and enjoy an incredible interactive exhibit of the Emerald Spectacular Bird of Prey Flying Exhibition. Let's sit back from the comfort of our own seats and meet their fantastic falconry team and learn all about their majestic birds of prey, featuring the world's largest eagles, a whole host of impressive vultures, fantastic falcons, and iconic and lovable owls.
Where are we? We're here in Emerald Park.
Yeah? Cool, because she's going to be quite close. She's pretty fearless herself. Anyone know what you're looking at by any chance? Eagle? Not quite, a bit smaller than that. She's a caracara, a striated caracara to be specific. And if you haven't heard of them, it's because they're pretty niche. They're only found in the Americas. And this one in particular, the striated caracara, they're only found right down at the southernmost tip of Patagonia, archipelago of islands, and most famously out on the Falklands as well. So they're a pretty rare bird of prey. And because of where they're from, they're also pretty fearless. You notice that she's just treating you like furniture. I'm sure she'd walk across this lovely plush toy if I asked her to. Would you, Jen? Or are you? She's perfectly friendly. She got the bluntest talons of any of them, so hopefully that was an enjoyable experience. Staying away, are we? No worries. So, the reason she is so fearless is because striated caracaras are the biggest thing where they're from. They're an apex predator. There's nothing bigger on the Falklands or other islands close to them. There's nothing bigger than a striated caracara like Jenny. So for that reason they've had however many millions of years of evolution with no concern for predators or anything like that. So they have no fear at all, and she's quite happy to treat you guys like furniture. As I said, she saw that my pot was slightly open there, and that is a window of opportunity for this clever little girl. Because as much as she is a raptor, and the definition for that, if you haven't been to a display yet today, a raptor is a bird that catches their food with their feet. So they'll grab it with their feet, with their talons, which are very powerful, and they will disseminate that way, or dispatch I should say. So, but she's also an opportunistic scavenger as much as she is a raptor and a hunter. She will look for easier meals than you could possibly imagine. So again, don't be tempted, don't be tempted. So they're looking for anything that might have already died out on the landscape that they're from, or looking to steal food if possible as well, because they're quite good at that too. They're kleptomaniacs, in fact. She's the reason that we ask you to hide your food, is because Jenny learned years ago what twisted chip tastes like, and she unfortunately has a bit of a fondness for it. What did you find right in the back pocket? You're so rude. And their name, right, just as she's squawking away, sorry, I didn't see the fear until it was too close. Their name comes from a couple of different things. Striated is describing the striping pattern that she has on her head and her chest as well. And caracara is that noise that you're hearing just there. So that is a description of the sound. Very social, highly intelligent, and if you've heard of the Falklands, you've probably heard of the Falkland Wars. What do you find down there? Crumbs? Who had food out before the display? No worries, guys. A small bit won't hurt her, but obviously human food is not very good for our birds for the most part. But if you've heard of the Falklands, it's probably because of the Falklands Wars. And caracaras learned back then that soldiers keep rations in their tents, and tents fall down very easily if you pull up the pegs, so they are quite clever at sourcing their food by different methods. So we'll show you quickly just how clever Jenny can be. Has anyone ever heard of kerplunk? It looks something like this. The idea is there's something on the top, you pull out all the sticks, and that something falls to the bottom. However, we have to Jenny-proof this one, because she figured out how to cheat and break it before she figured out how to play it. So it's bolted to a wooden platform now instead, and I'll just throw her food reward. But she figured it out without us really having to teach her. Just knows that if the sticks come out of the tube, generally she gets some food afterwards. And you see how dexterous she is with her beak as well. So quite clever, quite nimble, and a nice way to demonstrate just how smart they can be. We have to do lots of stuff like this with Jennifer, out her aviary, because caracaras are very intelligent, very active, very hyperactive, I must say. So they need to be mentally stimulated as much as physically. And it's a big part of what we do as zookeepers anymore is not just looking after the physical health of your animals, but looking after their mental well-being too. So if she's occupied and she's busy and she's challenged, mentally it means that she's as happy as we can possibly keep her. So lots of enrichment going into Jenny's aviary. Ooh, we saw his own reflection again. Yeah, do you know what you're looking at, anyone? As he has a brief panic. It is a snowy owl, yes. What would be a good name for a snowy owl? Hedwig, yeah? No, this is Dobby. It's too obvious. Couldn't do it. But that's where they got their fame, obviously, the Harry Potter films. All the owls that played Hedwig, even though Hedwig was a female, they're actually all male, like Dobby here. Because for years scientists thought they were two different species. They're quite different looking. So the females have much more of those dark spots, and the males, like Dobby, look like this. Very pale, very white, very pretty, but very camouflaged in their habitat as well. So they're from the Arctic tundra, which is the largest open plain in the world. So they're hunting on very snowy habitat, and also obviously quite a cloudy habitat as well. But because there are no trees, they have to nest on the ground, and that's where the females have all those dark spots, is to camouflage their nest. And as much as, you know, he's quite pretty and cute looking, has anyone ever had a tangle with a ground nesting bird like a swan or a goose or a duck? No one's ever been attacked by a goose? Yeah, there we go. There's always one more hand than mine. Just folks, make sure we stay seated over here, because that owl can't steer when he gets in close. And he will be getting quite close to you there. So, because they nest on the ground, snowy owls will defend their nest very aggressively if they need to. The males in particular, oh, I just dodged that one. The males in particular will do the defending while the female is sitting on the nest. So, the way that they do it is basically, as they're passing over your head here, you can see that he's camouflaged quite well against the sky up above us. But as well as that, I don't know if he heard anything as he flew past. We might, if I send him up to the top corner to Shiva here, and then try and get him to do a lap the whole way over the audience, have a listen and see if you can pick up any sound. Because owls are masters of stealth in terms of their hunting, but for the snowy owl, it helps them to protect their nest as well. Folks, again, if we can just make sure we're sitting down in the front row over there, where that owl might clatter into somebody. So, if you want to close your eyes, and we'll see if we can get him to do the full length here, and see if you can hear anything at all. Okay, Dobby. 3, 2. Anything at all? You didn't close your eyes, obviously, because I can see the fear there as you recoiled away. So they fly completely silently. It's how they sneak up on both predators and prey. So they might need to defend their nest from some rather large things in their habitat. Can anyone think of anything that lives up in the Arctic? Shout it out. Arctic fox, polar bear, wolves, yeah, all possibly looking for snowy owl nests to try and get themselves an easy meal. But Dobby has incredibly powerful talents. He can't be seen and he can't be heard, so he can sneak up on those animals, kick them in the backside and chase them away from his nest. Their eyesight's excellent at a distance. It's like having built-in binoculars. His eyes take up 70% of his skull. But he's got this lovely disc-shaped face as well that focuses the sound in towards his ears, and they reach each ear at a different point in time. So they can pinpoint very accurately where their food is by sound alone, which is important for an owl, because, or snowy owl especially, they feed mostly on something called lemmings, and lemmings live under the snow. They can't be seen anyway, so they really do have to rely on their hearing, their super sense, to find and to catch their food. So it really is an exceptionally powerful sense that they have as well. All still happy in our seats, yeah? Yeah? Cool. Don't stand up for the next one. Dobby was pretty poor at steering when you get close to him, because that eyesight fails up close, as you saw. But the next one is kind of like a jumbo jet taking off. So if you do get clipped by some wingtips, just count yourself lucky here. That's only wingtips, hopefully. So the snowy owls actually do show up in Ireland every now and then. They're a vagrant species that we get occasionally in the Arctic winter. There's no fear. I shouldn't have built up any fear here. Bane is an exceptional flyer. You're going to beat me to that touch, though, buddy. Exceptionally quick as well. Lazy, you bailed out. That was too slow for me, sorry. I'm sure you know what you're looking at here as well, roughly. A vulture, yes. So he's an African white-backed vulture, an endemic African species, meaning only found on the continent of Africa. One of 23 vulture species in the world, and unfortunately, pretty much all of them are either endangered or critically endangered. So they tend to have a bad reputation, and we're here to dispel that. As you can see, you can feed him out of your hand. He's perfectly lovely. But what's important about vultures is what they do for us humans, animals like this, scavengers. What do vultures feed on? Anyone? Dead meat. Any dead meat at all. Doesn't matter who you are or what you were. Once you're dead, you're vulture food if possible. We don't have them in this country, but we have other scavengers who do a similar job. So feeding on dead meat before it starts to spread disease is a very important job in the ecosystem. If we didn't have animals doing that, disease would spread much more easily. For example, the Indian subcontinent has lost 99% of their vulture population through no fault of their own. It was due to the use of an antibiotic on cattle that turned out to be lethal to vultures. Rabies cases have skyrocketed as a direct result. So we do need vultures clearing up the carcasses. Unfortunately, on the African savannah, for African white-backed vultures like Bane here, who is a critically endangered species, they're quite persecuted in particular by poachers. Because if you've just shot a rhino or an elephant, which is bad enough, vultures circling over your head is going to give your location away to wildlife rangers and make you more likely to be arrested for your crimes, which personally I would love to see, but unfortunately it's very easy for them to deal with as well. If you poison a carcass, it can have a pretty drastic effect on vulture populations. So there's an example from 2019 where 3 elephants were shot for their tusks, their ivory, and if that wasn't bad enough, they poisoned the carcasses as well, and it wound up killing 523 vultures all in one go. 468 of them were African whitebacks, just like Bane here. So a critically endangered species still continuing to suffer through just human ignorance, which we really need to move away from. And they're an incredible group of birds as well in a couple of different ways. If anyone has better eyesight than an eagle, it's a vulture. If you had Bane's eyes, you'd be able to, no problem, read a newspaper headline down the far side of the bison paddock here, over by the circus tent. No use for him, of course he can't read, but what he could do is he could spot a goat or a goat-sized carcass from anywhere up to 6.5 kilometers away, which is particularly useful for a carnivorous scavenger like him. As well as that, they're some of the best flyers in the world as well. So the highest flight ever recorded was a type of vulture, a close relative of the African whiteback called a griffin vulture. Would anyone like to guess, either in feet or kilometers, how high do you think the highest flight ever recorded by a bird was? Shout it out. We're quiet at 4 o'clock today, aren't we? Well, shout louder. 5 kilometers, okay, good guess. It was about 11 kilometers straight up into the sky. That's pretty impressive. In feet, about 37,000 feet, and if that number sounds familiar, cruising altitude of airplanes, unfortunately. That was how we learned that critical piece of science, but it's incredible. The way they fly will be very different than any of the rest of the birds you'll see in this display. They use something called a thermal, a hot rising pocket of air caused by the sun heating the soil. And that's like a free elevator for a bird that large to allow them to get way, way up into the sky and to just soar for hours at a time while using that eyesight to try and spot their food down on the surface, down in the African savanna in the case of his. So 23 different species. They're split into Old World and New World. So the Old World vultures being European, African and Asian vultures, and then on the other side of the Atlantic, even though they're actually not a close relative at all, there's a few other species of vulture then as well, but they've just evolved along the same route of filling the same niche in the wild here. And some other beautiful flyers who would definitely use thermals as well. These are, anyone? Seagulls. Not quite, they're a bit bigger than that. They're a common white stork, a very, very common European bird, one that unluckily we don't get here in Ireland. We're quite unfortunate in that sense. I think we're one of the few countries, probably ourselves and Iceland, the only places who don't get them. They'll do some beautiful flying for us as well, and again, when they're down in Africa, like Bane, they would use those thermals to get up to heights and to soar. And in fact, on certain days with certain weather here, particularly recently, all the thunder, the high pressure system that causes that, we've had to be quite cautious about flying storks because there's something built into their brains that tells them at certain times of the year, babies, yeah, one for everyone in the audience. But that myth is quite interesting, and where it came from is quite fascinating as well. Because we learned a really critical piece of science from storks, right? And if you go back a couple of hundred years, right, there's no planes, people don't go on holidays as often as we're lucky to. People weren't traveling the world quite as much. And nobody could figure out why storks disappeared for several months of the year from Europe. They only showed up in the summer. They brought the babies, they made huge nests all over Europe, then disappeared. And it wasn't until a stork appeared back into a town in northern Germany with a wooden spear lodged through its neck that we realized what was going on. Because when they studied that wooden spear, it wasn't made from any type of tree, any type of wood that was found in Europe. It was an endemic African species of tree. And this is how we discovered migration. Tons of animals do this. Lots of animals, birds in particular, will travel colossal distances. Think of all the swallows in your skies at the moment, swifts and house martins and sand martins. They've all come up from Africa. Storks have done the same across all of continental Europe in the last couple of months too. So they are one of the best migrators, and the way that we discovered migration in the first place, quite an incredible story. The last couple of birds here, these and the vulture that came before them, they kind of break the rules, fighting over food, not because they're bold, but in terms of the fact that they're not raptors. Again, remember, a raptor is a bird that catches their food with their feet. That's how they dispatch it. Storks are waders. The vulture beforehand was a scavenger, so they'll never actually hunt for anything. They only feed on the dead, they don't kill. So that puts them out of the category of raptors. But for the storks, they're waders, and if they're using their weapon, you see what they pick the food with? Not their feet. The beak. So they are a carnivore, they are a hunter, and they look for fish in ponds, amphibians as well if they can get them by the bucket load, and other small mammals, maybe small reptiles too, that they can fit down their mouth in one go. So they're a wader, but a very different type of bird to any of the ones that you've seen so far. We all feel comfortable in our seats for one last one? Yeah, okay, because it's important you remain seated for this. We're going to inject a bit of speed. And it can get a bit risky if anyone stands up now with the speed that they can reach. Who knows what the fastest animal in the world is? Falcon. What type of falcon, anyone know? Peregrine falcon. And we'll be joined by one quite shortly. Cheetahs, the fastest thing on 4 legs. Hawks, incredible acceleration, 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds, very, very quick. But falcons, as a group, are the fastest thing that evolution has ever produced. And the masterpiece of evolution is the peregrine falcon. Minty, hello. And the way that they reach their top speed is a thing called a stoop. So they'll climb way up into the sky, and they'll shoot down, using gravity as their friend. They tuck their wings into a teardrop shape and just plummet down out of the sky at ferocious speeds. They tested this once. They dropped a peregrine out of I think a blimp or a balloon or something like that, and it hit nearly 400 kilometers an hour. Double, triple the speeds that we're allowed to drive on motorways. They are very, very impressive, faster than an F1 car is moving in this day and age as well. So what Minty's doing here is circling around, looking to see if any food might appear, and his food is going to appear in just a moment. I'm going to try to demonstrate for you a little bit of the power that a peregrine has, and we are very much back to a raptor now. I'll point out, right, did anyone see that swallow had a go at him? Did we see that? That's because they probably, last year at least anyway, they had a nest in this tower up here behind the pond, and they really don't want a peregrine flying around because it would be a risk to their youngsters. But the swallow is so quick and so nimble, so small, it knows the peregrine won't get it. Here in Ireland, where peregrines are native, they're one of our native species, they've started to do quite well in cities because they can feed on pigeons. We create a lot of nests. Pigeons like to feed on that nest and clean it up, and peregrines like to clean up the pigeons if they can as well. So they've started nesting in tall buildings. And they are specialist bird hunters, so what I'm going to pull out of my bag in a second once he's in the right position is a leather pad with some feathers attached to let him try and show you how hard a peregrine can knock their food out of the sky. So, here we go, mate. And I have to get him coming at the right angle for this, or it's not going to work. So we'll try and get him in the right spot again. This might work. Here we go. Ooh, I have to run with him as well. They are built to crash into things. It looks a bit aggressive when he lands on the ground like that, but he really gave that an almighty thump. And that's exactly what they'll aim to do in the wild too. One good smash, catch their food either on the wing or bring it to the ground as well. And what you see him doing here then is called mantling. He's caught his food and he wants to protect it and himself from any other aerial predators or Shivas who might come to try and steal his food from him. Now, we're not stealing his food. What Shiva's going to do is called trading off. Because people have worked with falcons in particular for thousands of years, possibly up to 4,000 years, using them to hunt for our food. So you would train a falcon to hunt and they would catch your dinner for you essentially. So if you imagine that instead of that leather pad with feathers attached to it, that was a duck. Shiva wanted to take duck home for dinner, which she doesn't because she's vegetarian, but anyway, we'll imagine. And what you do is called trading off, and that's what Shiva is demonstrating for us expertly now. So you take a small piece of what they've caught, enough to feed the bird. He might weigh, male peregrine, he could be somewhere around maybe 700-800 grams. And to keep them fed and happy, you break off a small piece of that food for them. It's in Shiva's glove now. He starts digging into that instead, and you bag your duck to take home to the rest of your family. So people have been doing that for anywhere up to 4,000 years, and it is a joy to get to demonstrate it for you in a more modern fashion here in Emerald Park today as well. So yeah, the masterpiece of evolution, the peregrine falcon, an absolute joy to fly. Minty's an older boy as well, so he's I think 16 or 17 we think he might be, and very much an Irish peregrine as well. He's got the Irish peregrine genetics in them, and they're some of the most sought after in the world for hunting and racing and things like that. They're lightning quick and beautiful to look at as well, those lovely dark cobalt colours that they have. He was the last bird in this display, and this is the last display of the day. Folks, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop up and ask on your way out. If not, thanks for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your day at Emerald Park. Cheers.
Thank you.